right, welcome back, listeners. I know it's been a bit of a break, but this is Arts and Crimes, and I'm your host, Kelly.
And I'm your guest, co-host, Josh.
And I'm Brandon.
He's also here. Yeah.
That was mean.
What? How was it mean?
Yeah, He's also here.
I just chose not to give myself a title.
The man has a title.
But I don't want to put a label on it.
It's sub-guest co-host.
All right. It's welcome to the new year. New us. It's the same us.
Same us.
Yeah, it's not any different. Although I did, while I was doing editing for the last 2 episodes and then writing this one, I was like, we should change our name. We should just be like Arts and Intrigue or something. But I feel like I'm already committed
to Arts and
Crimes. It would be a crime not to keep doing the pod. And that's the crime.
True.
Our tenuous crime.
I mean, it's your pod. Do what you want. If you want to rename it, rename it.
It's our pod.
Don't rename it. Just go completely off the rails, but keep the name.
Yeah, keep the name.
You're like, this Arts and Crimes pod is now a fan podcast for SpongeBob SquarePants.
Oh, that's a terrible idea. Although we could do movie reviews and show reviews, because I feel like we squeak those in every time anyways.
That's true.
Yeah.
Like Stargate?
That's what we remember from last
excellent
episode.
Review of Stargate.
Yeah. So just as a fair warning, my throat is a little bit scratched. I think I sound fine, but every time I laugh, I wheeze a little. Yeah. So, not like that at all.
That was Kelly.
Yeah. So I'll try not to sound like any of that just happened.
Yeah.
You sound like the Emperor from Star Wars. If he ever laughed, when he laughs.
Yeah, they cut all of those scenes out.
Yes, good.
Is that the shadow?
That was supposed to be the Emperor. That was the shadow playing the Emperor.
Yeah, Palpatine knows. Bluko. Okay, so to get back into the rhyme and rhythm of things, I think we're going to start with a recap from you guys about the last pertinent episode, because our last episode was The Shadow.
Yeah.
But before that was part 1 of Amarna, so take it away. What do we remember?
All right. Okay.
You want to start or you want me to start?
You can start. Sure.
Okay, so first off, Stargate was the greatest ever film created by the hand of man. It starred the man from Quantum Leap and Kevin Spacey.
All right.
And David Duchovny.
And David, made a cameo as one of the guys with the head of an animal. So you couldn't tell it was him, but he was there. Yeah. There was a Egyptian guy named Akhenaten.
Nailed it.
And he was like, listen, we're all about one God now.
Wait. First off, he was like not the first son, right? And then first son dies. So then he's...
Under very mysterious circumstances. That's the crime.
We literally don't know anything about how he died.
That's the most mysterious it can possibly be, as if you know nothing at all about it.
0, yeah.
Anyway, okay, so the first son dies.
Yeah, he does. So... Tootin', hootin'. What was his name? Akhenaten?
Akhenaten.
Akhenaten.
Because you made a joke about how Akhenaten had done that.
Yeah, Akhenaten.
To kill
his
brother.
I said Akhenaten done that, I think. I don't think
pretty
I said
close.
Right. Yeah. So Octagon is like the pharaoh, and he's all, let's speed things up, and does a festival thingy, like after 3 years or whatever.
It's supposed to be after you're like 20 years or something
like
as pharaoh.
40. I don't know. 30?
It's like 20 years, 20 or 30 years.
That's a lot of confidence in your pharaohs that they'll live a long time.
Well, I mean, they're taught that they're eternal, right?
But they've seen other pharaohs die. They know that they're not eternal.
This time we're going to get it right. I'm the eternal one. Yeah. So he does the festival, and that perhaps is starting to get people questioning his judgment. And then he's just like, we're going to just focus on one god. Because that's trending right now out in the world. And so we're going to do that sun disk boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ra.
Aten.
No.
Dang it. Hurrah for Ra.
Ra is a sun god.
He comes up over there and he goes down over there. That's an Eddie Izzard bit. Go Google Eddie Izzard. Hurrah for Ra.
If you get anything out of this episode.
Do you want to interject? Should I keep going?
I should interject.
Okay.
So, Akhenaten. It's well known that...
I doubt it is.
It's well known that nothing is well known about Akhenaten. He's a mysterious guy. Because he got everyone mad at him with his stuff about the gods. Here's what's happened. If you show up and you're the king and you go, listen, guys, everything that you believed, I don't like. It's all out the window. Now you're doing what I say. Yeah, there's going to be some resentment for that.
It's quite possible.
We also learned that the Egyptians invented art. And it was because of that, because they were so early in the art game, nobody else was doing art, and they were like, let's art it up. And Akhenaten was like, maybe we do better than a child's drawing. For me, God. And so they did some good sculptures.
Yeah.
But we only have some of them. Wait, did we learn about Nefertiti, or did I just read about it on Wikipedia?
I think you jumped the gun and you read
Dang
about
it.
it.
Well,
I'm really excited to get to the bust of Nefertiti.
Yeah, you are.
oh, dang. Yeah, so he relocated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And called it, I don't know, Beautiful Aten or who knows what.
Amarna.
Amarna.
Actually, it was called like Akhenaten,
Yeah.
but we know it as
Akhenaten.
we know it as Amarna because
Amarna.
that's so much easier.
Anyway, while they were there, the art went all weird. And he was like, sculpt me in all my roly-poliness.
Yeah, he had a belly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
He was like, this is going to be real popular later. Trust me, guys. I'm starting the whole thing now.
so I don't think that I have much else to say
To add?
about the episode we're trying to summarize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like you guys got
was
the main.
he dead by the end of the?
Yeah.
Okay, so he
By
did,
the end of the pod.
By the end of the episode, yeah.
Was
Yeah.
the crime somebody murdered him? Or did he
think it was
die
they
of
tried to
diabetes?
Murder all that art, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the main crime, we're gonna actually hit a few crimes in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
But
perfectly named podcast.
Yeah, the main crime is that the art was almost entirely wiped from history.
Which is pretty nuts.
Yeah, nutso. And it was effective for quite a long time. So, yeah, I think you guys kind of covered it, right? He was born the second son to the pharaoh, Amenhotep III.
Always a
And
bridesmaid.
Never the bride.
Except for
until
when
the
he
bride
was.
dies.
Killed the bride.
And then he became the
and
bride.
then you become the bride.
Yeah. It's the perfect plan.
Yeah, so he did become...
I don't know why more women in rom-coms
don't just murder their best friend.
yeah, and take their place.
Yeah, I don't know why.
They didn't learn anything from Akhenaten.
You should do the next Hallmark movie.
What's that one about dresses? 37 dresses?
I don't know.
42 dresses?
So I don't know.
There is.
Is there a
one
dress
about
movie?
dresses? Sure.
Yeah,
I
and they're
feel
all
like I've heard that
bridesmaids'
title.
dresses.
Really?
And she should have just murdered her friend and took her place.
Yeah.
would've been
Instead,
a
she
better
got a
movie.
bunch of bad. She got like 47 bad dresses.
Yeah.
Wow, 47?
30.
That can't be right.
I
That's
think
too
it's-
many.
It's a large number.
It's too many friends. Stop having
16
friends.
dresses.
That's 16 candles?
Oh, 16 candles, you're right. 16 candles for 7 brides. For
No,
8
that's
sister.
7 brothers for 7 brides.
27 dresses.
Oh,
20,
27.
okay, 27 is way too many.
Yeah, she needs to back down.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole point of the movie. It was too many.
I know,
They could
but
have
I
shot
mean,
for a much lower number and still had it be
like
effective.
10 dresses.
Yeah.
Don't you have to go over the top? What's the point if it's
Then
normal
why not
life?
do 300 dresses?
Yeah.
And then she could dress like Sparta and kick one into the Sarlacc pit or whatever that was.
Yeah, it was probably the Sarlacc pit from that movie.
300.
The Spartans.
The Spartans.
What's it called?
Stars,
Revenge of the Spartans.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
I apologize. Purge the tapes. Let's get back on Akhenaten.
Okay, yeah, sorry. We really got off on that one. All right, so Akhenaten, was he crazy? Was he a genius? Doesn't really matter because we don't really know. We found all of his stuff, religion, art, politics. He tried to change it all. Didn't work. He died, and they're not sure if he died from natural causes or because somebody killed him, so naturally you die kind of thing. So...
It's the natural thing to do when you're dead.
when you've been murdered.
He was drained of his blood and then natural causes.
Exsanguination.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be cool? But they haven't
To die of exsanguination? I don't think so. I think that would be
if they knew,
a terrible way to
if they knew
die.
if that happened, I guess is what I was thinking. But I was like, mummification.
I was going to say, when they make a mummies, they drain the blood anyway.
Yeah,
so
so I wouldn't...
no way for us to know.
Yeah, I wouldn't know anyways. So that's the thing. That's sort of the thing about all of this, is a lot of it we just don't know. Because they worked so hard to get rid of all the information.
You keep building up the mystery, and I feel like at the
To
end
no
you're gonna be
result.
at the end you're gonna be like,
it's still all a
and
mystery.
we
Nobody
discovered
knows.
it. No, you gotta have it.
Oh, okay.
And I went to Egypt and found his dad.
That's where I've been these last few weeks. Okay. So we kind of ended, the confusing part of the ending of the last one was the succession after Akhenaten dies. Because there's this pharaoh that rules for a very brief time named Smenkhare. But there's debate on who Smenkhare was. And so we're going to backtrack a little bit to talk a little bit about Nefertiti, and then round back off at the like Smenkhare kind of mystery. So Nefertiti, again, nobody knows who her parents actually were, but there are 3 theories. So one theory is that she is a princess from Syria, but there's not a lot of people that hold to that one because she was Akhenaten's great wife, and
Can't be a foreigner.
yeah, you can't be a foreigner generally.
I mean, he did a lot of other stuff weird though, so maybe
Yeah, true, and that's why I guess it's
he was a real rule breaker.
yeah. What a rebel. He wore like a leather jacket with his pharaoh stuff. And then another less accepted one is that he was Akhenaten's sister. There's no record that she was actually his sister, so it's just there's people that are like, but she could have been.
I suppose
Sure.
anything is possible.
Yeah,
Could have been dropped off by aliens.
which is also, I'm sure there's some people that think that too. But the one that people most subscribe to is that she was the daughter of a top Egyptian advisor named Ai. And I kind of lean towards that one as well. Mostly because Ai later becomes a pharaoh. So he's like sort of entrenched in the pharaonic politics already anyways. So why not include the family in the business?
Plus, he's got the perfect name for a who's on first mix-up,
Yeah.
where they're like, who will be the next pharaoh? And some guy's like, I will be the next pharaoh. And he's like, me? No, I. Yes, I'm I. I will be the next. And then everyone is like, if you believe that I will be the pharaoh, raise your hand.
And,
And then that's how he got it. Yeah. It was a real mix-up. A lot of shenanigans happening down in old Egypt town.
There's like, they're like, boing, boing.
Yeah.
Noise,
It was a real
effect.
Keystone Cop era of... Maybe that's why they got rid of everything, is they were like, this is an embarrassing period in Egyptian
We are
history.
ashamed at our humor.
How did we let that guy dupe us?
Okay. Although that is sequentially out of order, because he's actually after the death of Tutankhamun is when he becomes pharaoh, and Tutankhamun is after Smenkhare, which is
If you rated the pharaohs' names on hilarity, Tutankhamun's got to be near the top.
yeah, he probably is.
Give us your top 5 funniest pharaoh names.
I think if I could name 5 pharaohs, that's pretty good. Excuse me.
Amenhotep 1, 2, and 3
Yeah.
are 3 pharaohs right there.
And then there's Ramses, and Ramses is second. I mean, it was easier than I thought. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was barely an inconvenience.
You're basically an Egyptologist at this point.
Brendan, King Tut is Tutankhamun.
He keeps naming the same one in different ways. What about King Tut? That's Tutankhamun. What about
The little boy one.
Kama? Tutankhamun.
Why is he called King Tut?
Because it's short for Tutankhamun.
The toot.
Oh yeah.
The
I can
toot
see
part
how
of
that works.
Tutankhamun is the Tut.
That's sort of a like Richard gets shortened to Dick sort of thing.
Even less of a stretch. Tutankhamun
Starts
with T-U-T.
I know. To make it more obvious, let's call him King
Really?
Tutankhamun.
Yeah.
And then
Now
you can understand it. Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah. Why didn't they call him that? King Toot.
That's true. It should have been King Toot. All right.
So she was most likely the daughter of the...
I cannot believe that's where we were at. When you bring it back around, I'm like, how did we get to King Toot from probably
this daughter. All right, so...
Of I.
Yeah, just I.
Well, if he's I the second,
He was
Ah.
not.
it could be pronounced I.
I. And I the third, obviously I. But sadly, I the fourth becomes
Ivy.
I. Unless it is possible the ancient Egyptians did not use Roman numerals. So
That's weird. Everybody knows those.
yeah, all old numbers are Roman numerals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so back to
back to. So she was most likely the daughter of the Egyptian advisor I. A-Y is how it's spelled.
A-Y.
Mm-hmm. Not how you thought, huh?
there's a great song by Snow the Product called I.
Hey, just to be clear, right? They didn't use Roman numerals. They also, what letters did they use?
Hieroglyphs?
So how do we know it's spelled A-Y?
Because we found that Rosetta Stone, and we translate it as best we can.
It's a good point, though.
At some point, somebody was just like, here's the crossover.
I
Right?
imagine like the Egyptian people had something to do with that. I did not set this stone.
I don't think it was the Egyptian people.
You don't think so?
No, man. It was some Europeans who were like, Egyptian people, how do you spell that?
And
they were like,
the big letter I.
Tutankhamun, and he was like, Tut, you say? T-U-T. Done. And they're like, we call our things pharaohs. They're like, the kings, you say? King Tut. Great. Next one.
That's actually probably true. All right, continuing forward. So yeah, we really don't know much about her childhood, but we do know that apparently they had high hopes for her. Do you have any idea what her name translates to?
Who? What was
Nefertiti.
Her name? Nefertiti?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Kidney of happiness.
I'm going to guess bosom of the Nile.
Ooh, that's a pretty good one.
It's because it ends with TT. I just remember my mom listens to this.
She'll enjoy the joke.
Yeah, she will. So Nefer means beautiful or perfect,
And TT means...
Et means she is come. So it means the beautiful or perfect one has arrived.
That is some high hopes.
Yeah, seriously. Here's some other things she's known as. She's known as one of Egypt's most famous queens. I feel like there's a couple other that kind of are in competition for that.
Like Cleopatra.
I just want to interject for a second. You can cut this out.
Uh-huh.
But I want to explain my joke name for her was kidney is because Nefer is kidney.
In what? French?
Latin.
Oh, Latin.
Wow.
It's a medical term.
I
Right?
didn't
know so
like a
much.
nephrectomy is when they cut out your kidney.
Oh.
So that was where my joke came from.
From a nephrectomy.
And then we just didn't laugh.
Yeah.
We were like,
you
wrong.
just were like, why is it kidney branded? I was like, gosh dang it, it was a
We're
Futurama sort of situation. This is too
We didn't-
smart for the audience.
Yeah. Today I teach these two
If only my two siblings weren't the biggest idiots.
I didn't know that though, so
It's all good.
I'm gonna brush up on my Latin so I get more of your jokes.
I appreciate that.
a large portion of Brandon's comedy is
It's
based
Latin.
on that.
It's making a comeback.
It's a
Yeah.
medical term.
Yeah. Okay, so other names she's known for, other than one of the most famous queens: the king's great wife, or the king's principal wife, lady of the two lands, lady of all women, hereditary princess, great of praises, lady of grace, sweet of love, the mistress of Lower and Upper Egypt, and
That's a long one.
yeah, it is, and then Nefertiti, Nefertiti, which is what she changed her name to when Amenhotep changed his name to Akhenaten. That name is insanely long and hard for me to pronounce. That's the only time I'm going to say it. I'm going to call her Nefertiti for the rest of forever.
Wait, what was the long one again?
No. You could go back and listen to the pod. We do also know that she married Akhenaten. We talked about that last time when they were teenagers. During her marriage, it's confirmed that she had 6 daughters. So 3 of them she had in Thebes before they even moved to Amarna, and then the other 3 were after they moved to Amarna. Side note, 2 of her daughters later become queens. Neat.
That makes sense.
So she may also have had a son, but it's not confirmed if she did for sure. Just for sure that she had daughters. And there might be some reason later on. Anyways, throughout her Egypt career and life, she was really active in the affairs of kings. She also seemed to be all in on the worship Aten and move to Amarna jazz. And we have descriptions of her using a lot of kingly power and authority that would have normally been given to just the pharaoh, not the wife of the pharaoh. There's inscriptions and reliefs that show her serving as a high priestess and performing offerings to Aten, which is not something the pharaoh's wife had done before. She's also seen smiting female enemies of Egypt, which is fun times. Again, a job that wasn't usually done by the queen. She also had her own unique crown, which was another thing that was new. And it was a big headdress that was tall. It had a big straight edge, and it was topped with a blue crown.
Her crown had a crown on it?
Which is not uncommon in Egypt, actually.
Oh, okay.
So, are there any theories that Akhenaten was not actually the mastermind of all these changes? What if Nefertiti was the little bug in his ear?
Yeah. There are some theories that she was kind of the mastermind behind what was actually going on.
There are some theories. The theory is the one Brandon just espoused. There's no other theories, but we're like, yes.
He's the only one.
There is now a theory of the thing you just theorized about.
I'd never heard of it until I thought of it, so I made it up.
You should write
Yeah.
a scholarly article.
Yeah, send it
get
to
myself published. Actually, I'm going to call this episode "Me Getting Published."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can be
and
like,
then you
I'm
can
a
put that on your
published-
resume.
Yeah.
Published author.
Dear Egypt.
I just show up in Egypt claiming to be an expert. I got this all figured out, guys.
So, she worshipped right alongside Akhenaten, and she actually served as the female element in the divine triad that formed the god Aten. So, there was the god King Akhenaten and then Queen Nefertiti that sort of created the full idea of what Aten was for the people.
Was that like sort of a godhead sort of thing?
Yeah. I think that they were working towards like a single god, but the idea of them not also being a god was sort of off the table. It was a work in progress.
I love the idea of them being like, listen, we're going to one god. And then someone leans over and whispers. And he's like, I mean 3 gods. Just the 3, though.
The 3, and we sort of were like one, so it counts. So yeah, and because she was the female aspect, they really emphasized in a lot of her stuff the her femininity. So they, emphasized her female body. They utilized her in fine garments, and they emphasized her fertility, like constantly talking about her 6 daughters, which may have been why having a son wasn't a big deal and wasn't documented. Because there is theories that she's King Tut's mom, and a lot of people say she isn't. Who knows? But they really only focused on the fact that she had 6 daughters because they wanted to focus on that fertility aspect. So, like you were saying, some believe that she sort of served as the queen regent / co-ruler with her husband. But there really isn't sufficient evidence to prove it, but there also isn't sufficient evidence to disprove it, and that's sort of like this entire time frame. There's not sufficient evidence to sort of prove or disprove most things.
So we can make whatever theory we want, and no one can disprove it.
Yeah, as long as it fits loosely within the stuff that we've talked about, essentially.
Excellent.
So again, there isn't a lot we know specifically about her time, or kind of anyone's during this Amarna time frame, but we know this, that soon after 12 years of Akhenaten's rule, one of the princesses died, so they're down to 5, and then 3 disappeared. And then nobody knows what happened to Nefertiti. Like, her trail goes cold at this point. And so this is where we get some theories to maybe answer that. So for a while, scholars thought that Nefertiti had just separated from Akhenaten and retired to live in the North Palace of Amarna or in Thebes. And that, to me, feels a little bit like telling your kids that the dog went to go live on a farm after it died, Like, oh, Nefertiti just retired.
If you're a small child, disregard what Kelly just said.
All dogs go to farms.
Your dog is on a farm.
Don't worry about it.
It's fine.
Playing with the cows.
Hanging out with Nefertiti. Others say that she took on the name Smenkhare so that she could rule alone as a female pharaoh after Akhenaten died. There's no good evidence for that, however, but there also isn't any good evidence against it. The truth is we have very little evidence of who Smenkhare was.
It seems wild to me that there's not evidence against something, so maybe it's true.
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't it just be if there is or isn't proof, and if there's no proof, stop making crap up?
I mean, we can't help it. We're humans. But really...
Historians would be out of a job if you were like, listen, only tell us what you know. They would be like,
people.
Yeah.
But we can't really tell you
there
that much
was a
more.
person with this name at some point.
Listen.
They may or may not have been important.
Sure.
So what was funny is they found Smenkhare's name on drinking vessels or something like that, like
brandy?
wine stuff, like as a celebratory thing. And then there is some reference to him in the Valley of Kings, or her. And so that's why some people were like, ooh, maybe Smenkhare is Tutankhamun's brother. But it doesn't actually say that they're brothers, and they don't have any additional information about it, which you would think they would have, because they did find Tutankhamun's coffin and sarcophagus and all that stuff. And there's not any specific mention of Smenkhare in there. But we have not found Akhenaten or Nefertiti's mummies. So that's why, in addition to the fact that they tried to wipe out the entire era, We don't have any additional information on that. And then that's all kind of a little bit of drama there, is we don't know if she's actually Smenkari or not. But there's other drama that happened even more so with Nefertiti. So we've kind of circled around real quick back to the point where Akhenaten's dead, Smenkari was ruling, and we're not really sure for how long. And then Tutankhamun takes over. And this is when, during Tutankhamun's reign, which is very short, and then continuing afterwards, they decide that they need to get rid of all of the Amarna stuff. So they're working on destroying it all. So
that's during Tutankhamun's
reign? under Tutankhamun's reign, that he moved the capital back to Thebes and then systematically started erasing all of the information about Akhenaten and Amarna, all of that.
Kind of implies if he was a child of them, maybe not in love with what they were doing, or
trying to distance himself as much as he could, kind of thing.
Oh, like maybe a political move, to garner more
favor,
support.
that kind of stuff.
When you look at it too from a religious perspective, so whether or not he's his dad, whatever, like the previous pharaoh says, all the other gods are lame, and this is the only god that matters, and also me and my wife. The next pharaoh, like if something bad happened, he might be like, maybe we upset some of the thousands of other gods. We should get rid of all evidence that we ever believed those blasphemous things, and then try and convince everybody that we've always been about all the gods. So, like, it kind of makes sense that it would disappear as kind of a way to curry favor again, right?
Both with the people and with the gods.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, especially because in Egypt, they very thoroughly believed that having representation, like your sarcophagus and the writing on the wall and all that kind of stuff, having good representation and being remembered after you died was part of how you ensured you had a good afterlife. So not only were they trying to erase this as like history is, we don't want that, we want to appease the gods, but we also want to punish this person so they don't have a good afterlife.
Diabolical.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was mean.
Yeah. So they defaced sculptures and they broke down Amarna brick by brick. Like basically literally. So if you remember, do you remember me talking about those limestone talatat last time?
Yeah, they were special, right? Like uniform shapes,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. So
like
they
Minecraft?
were like, yeah, like Minecraft. I think you made
that comment.
That same reference, yeah. So they were a standardized limestone brick. And so they could tear the city down quite literally and then just repurpose it. And so a lot of the bricks they just kind of took and reused to build other things. And then they moved everybody out of Amarna, and it was just never spoken of again. No records, the buildings, the sculptures. They just tried to scrub it all from history. And it worked really, really well. I mean, it was very effective for a very long time, until their own civilization sort of started crumbling, which revealed the imperfections in their systematic destruction. Because we did end up receiving a few clues. So the first clue that we find is that there was still some ruins left, like the foundation of a lot of these large temple complexes, and then a lot of the smaller buildings that weren't using those talatat, they had just been left. So like the more like suburban areas where people were living, workers were living, they still had their foundation and their walls. And so we sort of found this remains of this city, and we didn't know anything about it, but we just knew that there was a city there. And so it actually was like mapped out. There were some French guys that had it like mapped out and stuff for a really long time. And then in like the late 1880s, there was some tablets found, and I mentioned them briefly last time, the Amarna letters. Do you guys remember those?
I maybe remember you saying that.
No.
I liked that you shook your head no before you said it. Okay, so these stone I just barely mentioned them last time.
Do you think that you can hear it, the head shaking? Because people say that, like, if you're on the phone, you should smile because it comes through in your voice. Right? So maybe he was shaking his head to make that no that he was saying, like, really effective.
Maybe. I don't know.
I am sorry, Kelly. I am super tired, so either I'm quiet or I'm completely off the rails.
You're fine. You're doing great. You guys are doing great. We're getting back into the swing of it.
How did you drink that whole thing?
I just used the straw.
I didn't mean how. I meant why, how.
Oh, it's so fantastic.
To those of our listeners who don't understand the physical company, Brandon came tonight with 79 ounces of, I can only assume, 100% caffeine. You drank it all.
And we're what? 20 minutes in? Oh my gosh.
There's no way
It's almost been an hour.
Yes. We've gone so long.
We only have 20 minutes of usable stuff. Okay. Oh my gosh. All right. So
We gotta buckle down.
we gotta really get to it, guys. So we found the Amarna letters, which I only just briefly touched on last time. So what those were stone tablets that were written in cuneiform, in the language of Acadia. It was the Akkadian language.
Why in the world do they call them letters? They're tablets?
So it's called letters because the writing that they found actually included a bunch of actual just letters back and forth. But cuneiform is one of the oldest systems in writing that we have record of. And it's so fantastic. It's such a useful tool or means of writing, I guess, because it's not actually a language. It's a system of writing. So it'd be like we're writing in English with our English letters, and then we go to Japan and we write in our English letters as well.
Right.
And so then everybody is using English letters, even though when you read it, like, you have no idea what it's saying because it's Japanese words.
Right.
I mean, that's what we do with the Roman alphabet. Yeah.
Yeah. But cuneiform did it first. But also they did it with a bunch of like dead languages, so it's like hard to read.
But also, I think you're asking why like tablets were letters. Is that the
Oh, yeah, like
why they were called letters?
I mean, when I hear of a letter, I think this is something I'm going to write out and I'll send it off to someone else to read, right? But if they're tablets of stone, why...
They were clay.
Clay.
Yeah.
Crap. You heard it first here, listeners.
We just broke the news. Clay tablets.
Yeah. It's written in clay because it's soft when they write in it, so they're just like pushing down with the reeds.
Mm-hmm.
But they're called the Amarna letters because they're predominantly a record of letters back and forth between the diplomats. And it specifically, like most helpfully, included letters from the Babylonian king Kadashman Enlil the First.
There'll be a test.
Yeah, at the end of this. Anyways, that sort of solidifies that Akhenaten's reign was during the 14th century because he's talking to Akhenaten in these letters.
All right. So I know I'm getting hung up here, but I just want more information. So is it that people wrote letters on like papyrus or whatever, sent that to the other place, and then somebody was like, we should make a hard copy of these that's going to last longer, and they transcribed it onto clay tablets, and those tablets chilled somewhere? Or
they get fired. It's quite the opposite of chill.
The tablets
like
were the letter.
out.
Yeah.
Wait, Really?
Yeah.
Like,
So someone
Like they delivered.
did they not
these-
have papyrus?
They're also not. I think maybe when we say clay tablets, you're like, it's like Moses came down with these. They're like this. They're like tiny. You know, they're like the size of a letter.
All right.
like they
How much
happen,
information can they pack in to that size?
Quite a bit.
like so clay tablets as a means of correspondence happen before papyrus. And when you think, like, when you just compare the two, so because it took a while to create the technology of papyrus and clay tablets, it was easy because, like, when you think about what is more intuitive, like, oh, if I squish stuff in mud and the sun shines on it, it stays. So they were like, great, let's send letters that way. And then even after papyrus was invented, a clay tablet is still a more durable way to send it. And these weren't like letters between like lovers or poor people. You know? This was a letter between the king and
Kings.
queen.
Yeah.
They probably wanted to send the most fancy pants durable way they could.
And they weren't worried about like size. Like it wasn't on like a single guy on a camel that was like, here's your letter. I got to be real fast. They're like, I don't know, put it in the box with the other 100 other tablets. Because they found a bunch of them. So they weren't worried about size or anything like that because they were kings. They could kind of do what they wanted. So I know when you say letters, it's like, here's a piece of paper and I fold it up and I put it in here and I give it to you quickly. But it is letters. It's just written on this clay, like Jess said. Wild.
All right. Cool. I mean, who am I to yuck their yum?
Exactly.
I'm going to send you a note on a clay tablet, and you're going to be like, I get it now. This is
love
so
this.
much better.
But that's also why we know cuneiform was so historically used, because it doesn't burn up. It doesn't, like you have a fire, and unless that fire rages to like a crazy high cone, that clay isn't going to melt. Did that make sense what I just said?
Up until you said that the fire raged to a cone.
Okay.
Want to clarify that? I assume it's a measuring unit
okay.
of some kind?
It is. So in ceramics, you measure heat based on cones. So a low fire is like a low cone. So cone 04 is a low fire.
How do you spell cone?
CONE.
Oh, just
Like an ice
regular.
cream cone?
Like an
Hold
ice
on.
cream cone.
So
and here's why.
How many?
That's what
how
I
many
wanted.
cones is an ice cream cone?
It's
Is that like negative cones?
negative, yeah. It's not
So-
even, it doesn't even hit the cone scale.
How is that possible? It is a cone.
Because like a low fire, like the cone 04, is almost 2,000 degrees. And that's a
So,
low fire.
We would be like at a cone for an ice cream cone would be like negative 400.
We
Yeah.
should find out how many cones the sun is.
That's a great idea. I know it's more than the cones we do. So,
Okay.
also the cones go in reverse. So if you have cone 04 and then you have cone 05, that's actually a cooler fire than cone 04.
Oh, so an ice cream cone wouldn't be in the
Wait.
negative
It'd be
cones.
like cone 1000.
Yeah. So the sun is probably a negative cone, yeah?
Well, that's
cone
where it doesn't
1.
go negative.
Cone
The-
0.
the
it's
sun
like
is
the
first
cone
cone.
singularity.
Yeah, you get rid of the 0 in front of it. So like a higher fire would be like cone 10.
Oh, okay.
So the highest fire I've participated in, not that I've survived it, I just was working on a gamma kiln, and I think we got up to like cone 12 or something like that.
Can you guys just use degrees?
No.
Just stop.
Hold on. This is
What's
this
great?
is traditional.
Here's what's
Right?
great though
It's
is I
steeped in
can go from Denmark and we use the same cone systems
Like cuneiform.
to Korea. We're using the same cone systems, and in America, it's all the same cone systems.
But I'm just saying you could just use the same degree system.
But we can't because
You
we're
could,
America
if
and
you
we
really
use
wanted
Fahrenheit.
to.
Yeah. America was like Celsius, no thank you. But this cone thing,
That's a
we're
great
using that.
idea.
Well, it's because America didn't have a choice.
That-
We're like sneaky Potters. We're like, we're gonna do the cones. Like they don't know. They don't even know.
Okay, so the name cone, it's got to have an origin. What's the story?
So here's why.
Okay.
So the cone is determined by an actual cone-shaped item. So when
Called
you're
a cone.
when you're doing a firing,
Yeah.
you take these little things, and they're
They're
shaped
called
like
cones.
cones, and you put them in a little cone pack, which is a row of 4 or so.
A cone of cones, perhaps.
Not a cone of cones, a line of cones.
Ah, cone
Away
linear.
from the heat source?
No, so you have it at each kiln has little peepholes in them. So during the
Not
firing,
peoples.
not
Peepholes.
peepholes.
Yeah.
If they have peoples in it, that's murder.
Yeah, which we don't do. That's a crime. None of that. So that way, when
You know how in the John Wick movie, every single person is an assassin? That's how it is with ceramicists. They're all
trained
assassins.
assassins.
And they're like, they don't expect. We got our own kiln over here for disposing of the bodies.
No, it would ruin the pottery. Can you imagine the impurities that would be fired into your glaze with a body in there? It would destroy your piece.
I can't.
high
I don't
fire.
know. Yeah. Do
High
10,
higher.
12 cones.
Get that. Cone
17
up there.
cones at least.
Okay.
All right.
Here we go. Are you ready
For
this
which
real
part?
answer?
Okay.
For me to try and continue to derail the cone discussion.
Well, I still have something I want to say after you've finished, so continue.
You've been sitting on this cone joke forever.
It's not a joke, actually.
Oh, I'm excited. I'll stop.
So they're just physically cone shaped because it helps with the way that the cones function. So you have cones in a row, and you have like a guard cone, a target, and a guide. So a guide, a target, and a guard. And the way that you do a fire,
Isn't that
I thought
more
you were about to zap it.
assassination terms? A target. You just said target.
no, it's because it's the target temperature we're
Of
going.
murder.
Okay.
Continue.
Anyways,
Continue. I'll interrupt 2 seconds later.
I'll wait till you say anything remotely related to assassination, and then I'll be j'accuse. Wait, tell me how to say it. What's j'accuse
No, you
mean in
nailed it.
French?
I accuse you.
yeah.
J'accuse.
He's
You
going
want
to
me to
let
finish
you.
it?
He is going to let you finish it.
Unless you talk about murder again.
Okay. Here I go as quickly as I can.
The guard and the target.
And
The target.
the guide, the guard, and the target.
Yes.
So you have those right in front of the peephole because when you open it, you want to be able to see what the temperature is. And in order to make sure you're firing at the right temperature. So you have all of those cones so that you can make sure you don't under or over fire it. So the guide is that first cone that is like you're going in the right direction, you're getting it warm enough, and as the cone hits the temperature that it's supposed to represent, it sort of bends forward.
Okay.
So you'll see those guide ones bend forward and then overbend what they would if that was the target temperature. So then you get to the target temperature and you should see it bend a little bit because you want the clay to soften, but you don't want it to melt. And then you have the guard, and that's the guard because if that one starts bending, then you know you're over firing it. And if you fire clay at too hot for the clay body, then it will melt into a puddle. So
Did you just say body?
I did, yes. So
J'accuse! Mets-toi! Quoi?
So that's why I said unless the cuneiform tablets are fired at too high of a cone, they'll survive pretty much anything because unless they melt into a puddle, then just firing it is just going to maintain its form.
Okay. So, unfortunately, I continue to have questions.
Go ahead.
If I'm looking at my cones and I see that I've moved all the way into the guard cone is melty, and so I back it off. Is there any now? All my cones are melty. What if it gets too cold?
So at that point, the truth is when you get to a certain temperature, you only have to maintain for a little bit depending on the fire. And then you can start cooling off anyways.
Okay.
So as soon as you hit that guard, you know that, I've passed the temperature I'm going for. So you can pretty safely back it off a little bit, let it sit as consistently as you can for a little bit. And then all you're doing is just cooling it slow enough that you won't break any of the pottery.
Okay. Well, I thought it was a very interesting coincidence that there was a measuring, called a cone for ceramics, because this won't immediately make sense perhaps, but when you're talking about concrete, if you order concrete to pour a foundation or pour some flat work and sidewalk and stuff, you request a certain slump. And so the slump is how thick the mix is. And so, and it's the same deal that the smaller the slump, the thicker it is. And they have a cone that they put the cement into and then plop it over and take the cone off. And how much that shape slumps is the slump of the
grade
cement.
of cement.
Yeah. So if it slumps down 1 inch, it's a 1 slump, and it's very thick or whatever.
Oh.
So
That's cool. Yes. So there we are. I love the opportunity to get to talk about ceramics, and I apologize if that was too much. But cone is universal, and that's why we use it. The cones are adorable, by the way. They're like little tiny cones.
they're
The size of a human.
They're like kind of like pyramids but rounder.
this whole time they're just covering humans in it,
Actually,
using it to dispose of bodies.
actually, a lot of cones are angular. They're not rounded.
What?
Yeah.
Like a pyramid?
Much like a pyramid. Like
Whoa.
a 3-sided pyramid.
It all comes back to Egypt.
Yep.
It's coming back around.
Speaking
again.
of Egypt, what's
Perfect
happening?
segue. Back to the plot.
Wouldn't it be amazing if the pyramids in Egypt were like cones for the earth, and there's someone peeking in every now and again? Is like, they haven't bent over at all. This place needs to heat up.
That's
called
global
global
warming.
It's global
Yeah.
warming.
The pyramids are the guard. It still hasn't melted or
Yeah.
whatever. Let's get this.
Which one's our target? That's what we need to
man.
know. Anyways,
That's a good question. Okay, so
back to it. Sorry.
back to cuneiform tablets.
Cuneiform
The
tablets.
tablets. Okay,
Yes. So here's what's crazy. Okay,
Yeah.
because you're talking about how they're durable, right?
You talked about that.
Yes. When I say we, I mean me.
the royal we.
Yes. Okay, so here's a list of major cuneiform tablet discoveries, right? It is like tens of thousands of tablets. It's not like, oh, we found one and we're like, blah, blah. No, they had just gobs of these tablets coming out their ears
Yeah.
everywhere. There's so many cuneiform tablets.
Because all these languages use the same system.
In Draham, they found 100,000 tablets. So before the age of archival Gmail,
Literally,
tablet was the best you could
that's
do.
what we used in grade school. And then they were like, okay, we've got GoDaddy. Now we've got Google. We can stop using cuneiform tablets.
Yep, and that's why they fell out of favor. Google.
Yeah, Google.
Sweet.
Yeah, okay. So anyways, so back in the late 1880s, there was a couple guys, Egyptian guys, digging around in this Amarna site. Because apparently digging around and trying to find antiques and then selling them on the antique black market down there is a thing. I guess not even the antique black market, just the antiques market. So they dug up in this Amarna area and they found some clay tablets with cuneiform on them. And they sold them off in the antiquities market, not knowing what they were or what they meant because they couldn't read it. And then some guy bought them and they were placed in just some warehouse for a bit until later somebody else figured out what they were, like a few years later. And then they were like, whoa, dang, where did you get this? And those guys were like, we don't know, we bought it. And then they, did some sleuthing and found out where they had dug up these tablets. And so they were like, let's go back. And they went back and they found 21 more fragments during 1891 and 92. And that's when they were able to decipher that it had like all that, the diplomatic letters, all the stuff we talked about. It included a little bit of literacy and educational material as well, just so you know. And that helped solidify what that town actually was. And they were like, wait a minute, there was a king here? That's amazing. And then, do you remember those talatot we were talking about? Those limestone
Legos.
Oh, yeah.
Minecraft bricks?
The Minecraft bricks.
Legos.
So as they were discovering, broken down tombs and structures in other parts of Egypt, they were like, hold on a minute. Why are there reliefs on the back side of these stones that are inside these other structures? And so they started turning stones around and looking at these stones, and it had all of the relief sculptures they just hadn't like scratched them out. They're like, we'll just turn it to the back side.
And God won't be the wiser.
Yeah, then none will be the wiser. And so we found a whole bunch of these reliefs completely intact and well protected because they had been hidden inside these other structures and reused in these other buildings. So they just, flipped the stones and got all that information. And then I wrote, ooh, girl, there's one more big one. I wrote in my notes.
Those are some really good notes.
Yeah, it's a fantastic notes. And then there was a really big discovery in the ruins themselves. So this is where a real drama bomb for Nefertiti shows up. So December 6th, 1912, so all the way in the 1900s now, a German archaeologist, Ludwig Borchardt, was... I doubt that's how he said his name, but that's how I said it. I'm sorry. Ludwig Borchardt. He was excavating in Amarna, in the Amarna area. So at the time, the city was sort of considered mapped out, and there wasn't really anything else big there. He decided that he wanted to focus his efforts on the home area, and
that
so
rural,
rural sort of area.
Okay.
And he found, as he was searching, the home of Tutmos. And the reason that kind of mattered was because he was a known sculptor of ancient Egypt. And so he was like, oh, dog, we may have just found a sculptor's house. I bet there's cool jazz in there. That's what he said.
Yeah. The Germans are known
for their slang.
Yeah.
And so
there is some cool jazz, yeah, inside this house. Exactly. We will go in and we will find the jazz.
Exactly.
And we will take it back to our country.
He did say that. You will absolutely see him say that here in a minute.
You have to say it with the accent.
Yeah.
We will take it back to our country.
And the nice thing is people were searching in the temple complexes and the royal areas because that's where they thought the big money stuff would be. And so that's kind of why he focused his efforts out in this area because it was unlooked at and people sort of didn't think it mattered.
The crafty Germans.
Yes.
Always looking where you least expect it.
Our German viewers are going to skyrocket after this.
Okay, I have a blog, and I have one German viewer on my blog. He's going to be so disappointed, or she will be so disappointed in me.
Oh, man. Okay, so while he was working, they uncovered the area that was unfinished projects. It had some broken, face portions of sculptures. There was, partially done busts. And then they found, pigments, unused pigments that they would use to like paint sculptures and stuff, and some tools and stuff like that. And they found a sculpture of Akhenaten that had been mostly destroyed, but you could see a lot of the detail. And then, under the sand and rubble, in near perfect condition, was a life-size bust of the beautiful Queen Nefertiti. And this is where we sort of have the first crime of this drama-filled component of Nefertiti's life. So the rules in like archaeological stuff in Egypt is that when you find stuff that's related to the pharaohs, so any kind of kings or queens, it stays in Egypt. That's the rule. And then a like middle party that isn't one of the, from either the Egyptian or the nationality of the person doing the archaeological stuff, that neutral middle party will then look over everything else and award half of it to those people and half of it to Egypt. And so when Ludwig pulled this bust out of the ground, he was like, "You're coming home with me." And
it was love at first sight.
yeah, it really was. And so so when the mediator came, it was a French mediator, and he was particularly interested in writing and not sculpture. It was not his jam, right? And so what Ludwig did was he showed like a super crappy black and white photo of the bust that was like zoomed in and cropped weird, so you couldn't see the whole thing. And he showed the mediator like a relief sculpture of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, like with their children. And he was like, "This is my big discovery here, is this one." And then he knew that would distract the mediator because it had a whole bunch of hieroglyphs on it. So the mediator was like, "Oh yeah, this is my jam. I want to look at this cool thing." And so he's looking at it, and then he's also like, "Oh, so there's this sculpture. It's in a box way back in the back already. Here's a photo of it." And the guy's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And so he's like, "You can keep it. That's fine." And so he was like, "Success. I have done it." And so they took it back to Germany. He got to keep it. And then it was kind of like missing for a while. And then like it was like 11 years that it was missing, and they found later that he had just kept it in like his study, like just looking at it all the time.
Remember
the Mona Lisa?
Yeah, the Mona Lisa.
Or whatever.
Yeah. It's a similar. Why are people always stealing fantastic works of art and then just
keeping it in their room,
sticking it in their room?
But then when it got to Germany, the Egyptians were like, "Wait a minute," and they're like, "Oh, too late! It's already ours." And so it's in Germany still. Like,
it still is.
Yeah, it's like the.
Well, that's nuts.
Yeah, they're like, "It's awarded to us. It's ours."
Okay, there's a lot of controversy on this because this is the one thing I did Wikipedia last time.
There's a huge amount of controversy.
Yeah,
with it.
Egypt has tried to get it back a lot of times.
And Germany's like, "Nah, man, nah." So I'm curious what you have heard about.
All right.
About the bust of Nefertiti.
First off, she has a long, graceful neck. She's very regal. Her head crown is giant.
Yeah.
No, but okay. So here's what's interesting.
That's true, though.
Yes, she's fantastic. If I had her, I would put her in my bedroom and gaze upon her. for normal reasons. Normal gazy reasons. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So here's the funniest thing. There's been many times that they have attempted to repatriate it to Egypt. And one of the most insane to me is during World War II, Hermann Göring. Who, if you're unfamiliar with German Nazi politics, was basically number 2. Like, he invented the Gestapo. He's not a nice person. Ugh. And he was like, "Hitler, you know what? I think we should send this Nefertiti back to Egypt. It would be a good thing. Maybe they'd get on our side. it's the decent thing for us to do, which is insane. And Hitler was like, no, put her in my bedroom. No, not really. But he was like, no, we will create a whole new Egyptian museum, and Nefertiti will be the centerpiece. She stays in the Germans, in the German land, for the Germans to enjoy. Anyway, so yeah, it's crazy to me that one, like, the second most evil person in the world, that's not true. There's way more evil people than them. But, like, a particularly terrible person
Nazi.
was like, let's send him back. And then just the most terrible person in Germany was like, no. Anyone else in Germany would have said, sure, Göring, whatever you want. Only Hitler was the one who could go, no, we're keeping her.
Yeah.
And then, like, the Americans got her after the war. They seized the bust of Nefertiti. And Egypt was like, hey, can we have that back? And they were like, take it up with the new Germans. We don't want to get mixed up in this. And they gave it back to Germany. And they were like, Egypt, talk to the Germans. I think the Americans should have just given it back to the Egyptians.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's it's still there. But here's the second possible crime, because it hasn't been proven or not. So like 20 years later, there's a bunch of news that came out that the bust might be a fake, and that it was a forgery by Ludwig himself. Possibly.
Oh, wow.
Was that like Egypt trying to trick the Germans? They're like, it's fake anyway. You should just send it back.
Just give it back. Actually, I think it was a French guy, because the name of the book is the author is Henri Sterlin. So this French historian, claimed that the bust was a fake, and a couple of his reasons was that he thought it was either a copy or a model. The condition, it was in way too good of a condition to be a real piece, an authentic piece. It doesn't look like any other Egyptian art that we're used to looking at. She's too pretty to be authentic. And the bust next to it of Akhenaten was all broken up, so why wasn't hers?
Because she's so pretty.
Yeah. A couple other things that were brought up was the bust has cut edges at the shoulder, and that's fairly uncommon. That's atypical for Egyptian busts. Additionally, there was a few things that Ludwig did that felt a little sketch when he reported his findings and that kind of stuff. So people were saying that the area had been very well picked over before he went. Again, he went into the more rural area instead of the temples and the royal places, so that sort of counterbalances that. Also, Ludwig claimed to find the bust under only 20 inches of dirt, which people were like, why wasn't it found before that if it was under only 20 inches of dirt? I don't know. Other stuff was also found under only 20 inches of dirt, and its authenticity was not questioned, but that's one of the things they use as a possibility as to why it's a fake. He also was told to go out there and was specifically said, bring back a treasure whatever the cost. So that seems like not great. People have done things that are not so honest when they're told at whatever cost.
Yeah.
But I figure that could be either, it could either be a point in the it's a fake area, or a point in the fact that he pulled all those shady tricks to make sure she came back. The other thing is that bust of Akhenaten that was all broken up. It's guessed that the bust of Nefertiti was on like a shelf, is what they're saying. That it was on a shelf and that it had fallen when time makes fools of us all.
So poetic.
So the shelf stopped working, and it fell landing face first in the dirt, and they're saying, why wasn't she all broken up if she did that? My thought is because maybe the ground was covered with like sand and debris at that point. So, maybe that's why. Also, to counteract like why Akhenaten's was all broken up and not hers, like people were actively defacing Akhenaten stuff but not Nefertiti stuff.
Yeah.
So it could have very well been that they targeted Akhenaten busts and sculptures, but left the others because they didn't need to. You know, when you're like mass destroying a historical character, you're kind of in a hurry, probably.
Yeah.
Additionally, Ludwig found pigments that were left by the sculptors. And so they're saying that he could have used the pigments to paint the piece. So maybe he didn't find it painted, but instead painted it himself. And then also the 11 years that it's missing, like hanging out in his office, was a little sketch. But again, to kind of refute those, the time frame that he describes having found it, and by the witnesses, doesn't give enough time for him to have found it, paint it, let it dry, and then show it. So that doesn't really fit the time frame as much that I'm aware of. But people wanted to do what they could to try and prove its authenticity, other than just refute that it, like his story leaves room for it to be authentic and not authentic. They did a bunch of matching as far as like the style of art and refuting the fact that the shoulders being cut isn't actually that crazy, because there was more sculptures found that were not questioned that had that same shoulder cut. So that's sort of, there's not a lot of them, but there's at least one other, and its authenticity was not questioned. So there's that. And they did some scans where they scanned like the materials, and they did some chemical tests on the materials, and they scanned the bust in like a MRI machine. And the scanning of the MRI didn't actually help anything other than to verify that it's made of limestone and plaster, which is what they assumed anyways. But when they did the chemical analysis of it, they found that the limestone and the plaster and the paint all came from the same time frame of that 14th century BC time. The other thing that it found was that the plaster mixture was not the type of mixture chemical compound that we use now. It was a very specific chemical compound that was only used during that time and a little bit before. So any of the like fraudsters would not have known to use that chemical compound, because we didn't have the technology to test its compound until well after the bust was either faked or made. So that seems to be pretty good evidence that it is authentic, but there's still some doubts there. And they still say that he could have painted it because the pigments did prove to be from that time, but he found pigments there. So they're like, it's authentic, but there's still some people that are like, but maybe not.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the last drama there with Nefertiti.
I like the idea that he shows up and finds just like the most astoundingly detailed bust that is thousands of years old, and then looks at it and goes, could use a little color though.
I thought the same. I was like, any archaeologist that like found anything isn't going to be like, I should probably paint this.
Maybe he was like he wanted to be a salon whatever person. What are they called? Like a stylist. That was his dream his whole life. And he saw his chance and seized it.
Yeah, that would be absolutely insane. Without any pigment of any kind, it's still an absolutely amazing sculpture. Like, she's gorgeous. I don't know why you would do that. She's gorgeous.
She's gorgeous.
Yeah. Totes gorge, babe. A girl. She doesn't need any makeup.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The definition of girl boss.
Yeah, she really is. Like, girl king, girl queen, slay queen. So, yeah, we have, like, it's just this really intriguing style of art and this really intriguing time frame because we know so little about it. And all we have are these cool tidbits that we found that they tried to hide from us. And it feels a little bit like when you hide presents from kids, you know, you like want it all the more. And it's not even about the present anymore. It's just about finding it. And that's what Amarna art is. It's just this really cool treasure that we want so bad to find more of. But we haven't found Nefertiti's corpse. What is it called?
Mummy?
Her tomb.
We haven't found her tomb. We haven't found her sarcophagus. They have some mummies that are female mummies that they're like, maybe, but they don't know. And we haven't found Akhenaten's or anything, which is probably because it was destroyed. I don't know. So we have all these cool tidbits about this like crazy time, and we just don't know. And we really want to know, and we don't get to. That's it. That's the satisfying end of this episode, is we get to like enjoy the tidbits of art that we find. And like, maybe, I guess what the exciting thing is maybe we'll find something else definitive and we'll be able to like answer these questions. So we keep looking and we keep searching. So there we go. Any other nuggets of wisdom?
I don't have any nuggets of wisdom, but I do have a funny thought. Like, do you ever look at the cave paintings, of that happened tens of thousands of years ago, right? Mm-hmm. It's insane the number of people that have lived on the earth and the little traces of themselves that they left behind. Mm-hmm. And like this artist who created the bust of Nefertiti, like we know the name of the artist because it was in his studio. Mm-hmm. His name...
Tutmos?
It's just insane to me that thousands of years ago, these people were alive and making art. And they had their daily life, although many parts of it would be utterly alien to us, there's a lot of it that overlaps, right? Like we talked about the clay tablets, and those were just letters, and they functioned the same as an email today, but they were completely different in the execution, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just insane to think about the guy that owned this workshop, mm-hmm. closing up shop, maybe he died or whatever, we don't know, right? Mm-hmm. And sitting there on the shelf is a bust of Nefertiti, that all this other art had been destroyed, nobody else knew what she looked like, but and that style of art wasn't even popular, right? He created mm-hmm. like a photorealistic bust basically, right?
Yeah.
And it just sat there and then eventually maybe collapsed and fell into the sand or whatever. But for thousands of years, so like the door closed and several thousand years later, somebody else found it. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that artist had made was able to take the image of this woman thousands of years into the future, and other people could look on her and go, oh, I know what she looked like. Yeah. Like, that's insane to me.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And I think it's so cool to have those moments that tie us with humanity from so long ago in such like an intimate way. Yeah. To be like, oh, if she did walk out of the Stargate ship, we could recognize her.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty common for people want to like leave their mark or to have something that like helps perpetuate them. Mm-hmm. For instance, when I worked concrete and we would pour foundations, I would spit sunflower seeds into it and think maybe someday aliens would find my sunflower seeds when I spit on it and clone me, and then I'd be in the future.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I did a similar thing when I was in Denmark throwing pottery. We couldn't take it all back with us because we just threw like for 3 days straight. So it was just so much pottery. So I could only mail some of it back home, and I didn't have any space in my luggage because I travel light. And so we destroyed a lot of it. Like a lot of it we destroy because you can reuse it as grog in clay to like make clay chunky.
Or pirates can drink it.
That's an option. I wouldn't drink this though. But some of the pieces I liked and I didn't want to destroy. And so when no one was looking, I snuck out and I buried them in the gardens in the back. So that if in hundreds of years somebody's digging up that area, they'll find some of my pottery and be like, what is this crap? But my name will be on it. And I'll like be that, because it's pottery, so it's not going to go anywhere unless they find it and dig it up, but they won't. I buried it real good.
Where did you learn these skills for burying things that couldn't be found by the
assassin school? Yeah. You ceramicist.
But like really it is like I wanted to bury it because the idea of like maybe in thousands of years somebody will pick up that piece and it'll have my thumbprints on it, you know, like there was a life thousands of years ago that was connected to this in this small way, and now that person is connected to me in that small way too. And I just think that's really beautiful.
Sure.
You're like, no, it isn't.
Listen, it's sort of beautiful, but is it as beautiful as spit-covered sunflower seeds?
Yeah,
no. Okay, we had like a moment for a second, and then the moment disappeared, and now...
I didn't have anything useful to put in the moment. I'm sorry.
This podcast is over.
All right, well, it was a bit of a wild ride. We'll see if it makes any sense while I'm editing, but thanks for coming by. Again, do some art, but don't do any crime.
And if you see a ceramicist in your rearview mirror, they've come for you.
Okay, bye.
Later. What percent done are we, do you think?
Super close, actually.
We are 100% done. Bam! And then we just and that's the end of the podcast. We told you there would be no resolution, and you didn't believe us. Did you just shoot drink out your nose?
My body tried to, but I said no.
You closed those nostrils. All right.